Pardon the interruption, but I'm Mike Wilbon. The NCAA reportedly presented evidence that Michigan's sign-stealing scheme was allegedly funded by a booster named Uncle T.
I'm Frank Isola. T as in Tony?
Yeah, he's a closet Michigan
sense.
guy.
I got called 10 minutes ago.
Michigan guy. He can talk all that Notre Dame stuff if he wants.
He loves maize and blue.
Was wearing maize and blue yesterday.
Yeah.
All right,
it all makes
give it
sense.
Up. Come on.
It all makes sense now.
Welcome to PTI. Tony almost made it to Friday. But here to finish the week for him is our great friend and closer, Frank Isola.
It's a Friday. I'll give him that. It's a Friday.
It's a little tepid. Let's start where we have to start, with the Cincinnati Bengals losing Joe Burrow for the rest of this season. He left last night's loss in Baltimore with an injury to his throwing wrist, which turned out to be a torn ligament that is likely to require surgery. Frank, where does the loss and last night's leave the Bengals?
Yeah. In the immortal words of Howard Cosell, it is over for the Bengals. It's tough to recover from Joe Burrow's injury, but it's not just the offense. It's really about the defense here. Because if you look at Cleveland, they're in a similar situation. They just lost their starting quarterback for the year. But they have a defense that'll keep them in games. Cincinnati, the last 2 weeks, Mike, have given up a total of 949 yards and 64 points. They can't stop anybody. So now how do you expect a backup quarterback to every week go out there and put up between 20 and 35 points? It's asking way too much. I feel bad for Joe Burrow. He started the season with a calf injury. They started out 1-3. It's just not happening for the Cincinnati Bengals. And unfortunately, the next time we see Joe Burrow is going to be next season.
Yeah, Frank, I don't disagree with the words you've said. I mean, there's only one Josh Dobbs story.
Yeah.
Where somebody just gets picked up and flies in, swoops in, they can drop him out of a helicopter, and he can win a couple of games. Listen, you don't even have, in a 32-team league, you probably have 20 worthy starting quarterbacks, and 6 or 8 of those guys are bound to be 50-50-ish.
Right.
In other words, they're going to have a bad day, as likely to have a bad day as a good day. I mean, you got maybe 12-ish, a dozen or so quarterbacks you really want to call premier starting quarterbacks in the league. Joe Burrow was one of those, but you don't have backups to go around. You don't even have enough starters to go around. So Cincinnati's season is essentially finished. Yes, if you had that kind of game-wrecking, season-defining, franchise-defining defense, yes, you can sort of hang around in there. The Bengals don't have that, and now they don't have Burrow. And they're set up. I mean, they're set up with those receivers and Burrow to be a quick strike offensive team, a modern sort of, space-age team in the NFL. You don't have your trigger guy. You're not making that happen. So look, it's sad, but this season, and we're going to stay with this theme in a second. This season is being defined by these injuries, going back to starting with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
When he couldn't even get through the start of the season, Frank. So this is what the NFL is saddled with right now.
Yeah, I think for Burrow, the calf injury during training camp, so he's not playing. They lose their first 2 games. They're 1-3. And then I get it. They went on that 4-game winning streak. They look good, but the margin, it's so tight. And now he's injured, not going to play. By the way, they're 2-5 in games that he doesn't start. They're 29-21-1 in which he does start. By the way, the NFL is investigating Cincinnati because they did not put him on the injury report. And there's all kinds of videos
Let's
out there.
pay attention to the gamblers. We're partnered with the gamblers. That matters more than anything.
Yeah, but you're right, though, about losing all these great quarterbacks. It stinks, that's for sure. All right, the Ravens didn't escape last night's game without a loss of their own. Star tight end Mark Andrews is likely out for the season with a left ankle injury suffered on, look at this, a hip drop tackle that Coach John Harbaugh wants the NFL to review. Lamar Jackson, who was also dinged up, said of Andrews, "We're like bread and butter, peanut butter and jelly." Mike, how diminished are the Ravens without Andrews?
Well, again, staying with this theme, look, Mark Andrews, he could be the second best player on that team after Lamar Jackson. And if he's not the second best player, because you got some terrific players on that defense, then he could be the second most important player on the team. He is Lamar Jackson's security blanket.
That's right.
He is a guy who's gone out there and caught 100 passes in a season. I believe he's a 3-time Pro Bowler and at least one first-team All-NFL. He's that good. And so without him, you're asking a team that wants to rely on power football, and he's the power, he's the muscle in that. You're asking them to do something else, to go in a different direction. I don't want to hear next man up. And by the way, Mark Andrews, not the guy in Kansas City, somebody's boyfriend. Mark Andrews is the #1 tight end in fantasy football. I don't even know why I know that or looked it up. I was shocked to find it. Not Travis Kelce, Frank. Yeah. Mark Andrews tells you what the Ravens are losing if he's done for the season.
Yeah. And you're right about the security blanket. Just like, Rob Gronkowski and Tom Brady, Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes, that's what Mark Andrews is to Lamar Jackson. The last 6 years, 287 passes he's caught from Lamar Jackson. He has 33 touchdowns. The combination of Mahomes and Kelce has 50. They have 33. So you look at the Ravens, the last 25 years, they're well coached, they run the ball, they have a great defense usually, a competent quarterback, and a good tight end. That's what they have this year. Now they just lost a good tight end in their schedule, and they've been terrific. And they got a great defense this year. But their schedule gets really hard. Their next opponents for the rest of the season are a combined 31 and 23. That's the toughest schedule in the NFL as of right now, the rest of the way. And to not have Mark Andrews, I think for Lamar Jackson, this puts Lamar Jackson, who's been terrific, it's going to put a lot more pressure on him. And I understand they got these big-name wide receivers, but Mark Andrews was his guy.
Well, I tell you what, though, that division is just, really been hit hard. And, it looks like today, and you don't even know because you can't get through practice a day without injuries. The Steelers look like the beneficiary of this for the moment. Yeah. But stay tuned. Who knows what's going to happen with that division going forward? Yep. Let's move to the latest developments with the Michigan sign-stealing case. The university today fired linebackers coach Chris Partridge for what ESPN reports was his lack of cooperation with the NCAA investigation. Yahoo reports he attempted to cover up impermissible behavior. And Yahoo also reports that a booster nicknamed Uncle T, are you serious with this? Helped fund the scheme. Frank, your thoughts on today's developments?
Yeah, Uncle T is not Tom Brady. It's not Tyrone Wheatley either, former Michigan guy. So if you're in the D.C., Maryland area, all you see are maize and blue, Tony's people walking around. Michigan does play Maryland this weekend, so we get it. It's going to be a big thing.
Glad I'm not there.
Everything you just read, it sounds like we have our fall guy right now. He is the pound of flesh that Michigan is giving up to the NCAA. I thought it was us against the world. So I guess they gave up one of their own in this us against the world battle. But, Mike, there was a report that came out in Sports Illustrated where the Big Ten was going to lower the suspension to 2 games. Why? Let's see. Because then Jim Harbaugh would be eligible to be on the side of the Ohio State game.
The Ohio State game.
The NCAA, they revealed what they had in their investigation, and that's why Michigan came out and said, you know what? We're not even going to fight a legal battle over this one. We'll take the 3 games, and we're okay with it. So clearly, Michigan knows that they were in trouble on this one. It sounds – now, he was accused of trying to cover things up. To me, it comes across as a scapegoat in this whole situation, the pound of flesh.
Well, Frank, probably so. But, I mean, you'd rather have it leaked and you'd rather have to read about it or have other people read about it in Sports Illustrated. What you don't want is discovery.
Yeah.
That's what you don't want. You don't want anything official, some official body dragging people into some hearing or whatever situation it would be and then having this come out officially. You don't want that if you're Michigan. That's why they folded their tent or their hand, if you will, to say, yeah, we'll just take this and take the 3 games even. We don't want this out there. We don't want this sort of ruining the rest of the season and going on and on and on to the break of dawn into January. That's what they're hoping for.
Mike, Mike, you know how much hype surrounds this game? What do you think it's going to be like next week in Ann Arbor? It's going to be their first game since Harbaugh was suspended, all this nonsense going on. If they get a win against Maryland tomorrow, they're going to go in undefeated. How crazy is it going to be next weekend in Ann Arbor?
It'll be crazy, and I think they will rally the troops again. I've said it time and time again. Tony disagrees with me. I think they can rally. The game is in Ann Arbor, and I don't think Ohio State's that good anyway, with apologies to the best player in the country who is on the Ohio State Buckeyes, Marvin Harrison Jr. Yeah. Let's take a break. We're coming up. The Rockets are hot. The Clippers are not. Which one of those two should we be more bullish on?
And the Heat and the Thunder, the team that Mike's been touting all year long.
Yeah.
But one last night. Which team will go further this season? Toss up. It's next.
I look pretty good hitching my wagon to the Thunder in the preseason, don't I?
You look as good doing that as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander does in those Skims that he wears.
Pardon the Interruption is presented by Bullet. Pardon the Interruption, presented by Bullet. Part of Happy Hour.
Time to spank Frank and toss up. Let's get the first one from the producer over the loudspeaker.
Toss up, they play tonight. Which team are you more bullish on, the Rockets or the Clippers?
Well, we're talking about going in opposite directions, these two, of course, Frank. Rockets have won 6 consecutive games out of nowhere. Ime Udoka really reaching that young group, and aren't they glad they don't have James Harden? Oh, wait, James Harden is on the Clippers where they've lost 6 straight, and they did look better in their most recent game against Denver. At Denver, they pushed the champs in that game, and it started to look like, okay, so in the short term, I'm actually going to be more bullish on the Clippers because they do look better. Because listen, Frank, as you know, this is the last stop for James Harden. There's no place else he can be relevant. This is it, home. Speaking of home, Russell Westbrook is the one who's making the sacrifice and has reportedly gone to T. Lue and said, look, I can come off the bench here. I'm happy to do that. And you need one of them to come off the bench because you can't really be productive and be quick, and the pace is dreadfully slow with Harden and Westbrook and Kawhi Leonard and Paul George all needing the ball. They can't all have it. And so Westbrook, again, has become the sacrifice guy. Good for them. I think they'll get it together. I think the Clippers will be a factor. Houston, long-term, I'm more bullish on, but tonight I'm going to take the Clippers and go with
You know what? I'm more bullish on the Houston Rockets. By the way, Houston's yet to win a road game. They've only played 2. But you mentioned the name Ime Udoka, and you look at what he did in Boston, and he's not afraid to call out the stars, and that's important. And he goes to Houston, and it's not only Ime Udoka, it's Fred VanVleet, who won a championship in Toronto. So he added 2 adults to the room, and even our guy, Dylan the Villain, Dylan Brooks, has played very well, and I completely agree with him. For Memphis to blame him and make him the scapegoat for everything that went on last year in Memphis, I get it. He had some bad moments, but are you kidding me? John Morant was on the team. We're going to blame Dylan Brooks for that. So Dylan Brooks, say what you want. There'll be moments where he's going to drive you nuts. The dude competes every time he's out there. One thing about Westbrook coming off the bench, I ain't buying it. I don't think he wants to come off the bench. That's what I've heard, that he's not crazy about the move. But I heard when they made the trade, they were going to bring Westbrook off the bench. My thing, Mike, would be when James Harden was in Brooklyn, he enjoyed playing with the backups. Besides playing with Kevin Durant and also Kyrie Irving, because he had the
can
ball more.
hold the ball for 23 seconds.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'd rather bring him off the bench than Russell Westbrook. Keep the starters the same. Bring James Harden off the bench.
Okay. All right. What a mess the Clippers. That's across the street. I might wander across it, get an eye full of that. What's next?
Toss up, they both won last night. Which team do you expect to go further, the Heat or the Thunder?
Frank, this is hard because I expect OKC to be better. Look, I expect OKC in 2 years to be the favorite in the West, or at least staring Denver eye to eye. How about that?
Yeah.
So one of the top 3 for sure, maybe one of the top 2 in the West. I expect that. But you know what happens to young teams in this league, and they are young. Even with a star like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and I love Oklahoma City and what they've got. Isaiah Joe comes out and hits a bunch of threes. You got a guy like Lou Dort, who might drop 30, and he's essentially supposed to be a defensive specialist. You got both Jalen Williams, and one of them looks like a young all-star. They got like 7 dudes. I haven't even mentioned Josh Giddey, who hit all 3 of his threes last night. They're loaded. Chet Holmgren, by the way, is my favorite for Rookie of the Year. But Miami, this is what they do. They sort of just bide their time till they get to the playoffs. They're going to make a move, to me. Maybe it'll be Zach LaVine, a guy who has no more use in Chicago. You can get a guy like him, put him in that lineup down there with Jimmy Butler, a guy who actually got traded for. And I'm going to go with Miami because of the postseason ramifications, the veteran nature of them, Spo and Jimmy. I'm going to go with Miami, but I know Oklahoma City, you know I love them.
It's funny about Oklahoma City and their general manager, Sam Press. Everybody makes fun of them because they collect all these draft picks like you collect pocket squares. They got them for all eternity. But the guy who's put together a pretty good team, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has MVP-like ability. He's that good. So they look like a team that could finish in the top 6. But I'm going to say Miami as well. The experience is number 1. They finally beat the Nets. They had lost them a bunch of times in a row. I think it was 6 in a row. But Miami's winning without Tyler Hero. Last year, they made the finals without Tyler Hero. In other words, the guy's hurt, and they keep winning without him, and I think you're 100% right. Pat Riley was unable to land Damian Lillard. Pat Riley does not go, crawl up in a corner and start crying about that.
No,
he's figuring out a way.
not.
Who can be the next guy I get? At some point, the Miami Heat are going to make a move, and I get it. Yep. Boston right now is the class of the Eastern Conference. Milwaukee, Lillard looks good when Giannis isn't playing. Giannis looks good when Damian Lillard isn't playing. Maybe they'll figure it out. But Miami, for me, can still be a big-time threat in the Eastern Conference.
Big-time threat. They can be. Probably will be. That's it for Toss-Up. Let's take one last break, but still to come. Did Shohei and Ronald Acuna Jr. both deserve to be unanimous MVPs?
And do the Steelers or the Browns have an edge on Sunday? Oklahoma City, top 6 team, yes or no?
Yes. Frank, I got a new pocket square, Hermes, as a birthday gift last night.
Nice, see?
That goes to the top of the collection. I didn't have that before.
Bullet Frontier Whiskey. Please drink responsibly. Part of Happy Hour.
I'm ordering you to get happy, people. Happy 22nd birthday tomorrow to Caleb Williams. The reigning Heisman winner leads USC against UCLA tomorrow in what could be his final collegiate game if he chooses to skip the Trojans Bowl game to prepare for the NFL draft. Williams has long been assumed to go #1 overall, but USC's recent struggles, they have lost 4 or 5, have led some draft analysts to put North Carolina quarterback Drake May in that mix. Williams says he'll spend Thanksgiving week with his family evaluating his future options, which could include returning to SC for his senior season. Frank, what do you think he will or should do?
Yeah, him returning, which he talked about in August, sound like an idle threat. Now it sounds like it more so than ever. You don't go from having a great year to having an okay year, then go back to college. There's a chance he's going to be the #1 pick. You come out now. It doesn't matter who's going to have the first pick. You come out and you're the #1 pick. Not going back.
It doesn't matter who's coming out. And
sense.
I don't want to hear Drake May over Caleb Williams. Just use your eyes. Watch the film. Happy anniversary to the Heidi game. On this day 55 years ago, NBC cut away from Jets Raiders on the East Coast with 1 minute left in order to air the movie Heidi. The Jets were leading by 3 at the time, but the Raiders scored 2 touchdowns in that final untelevised minute, at least in the East, to win the game 43-32. These were the days before Sunday Ticket or Red Zone, so you got what the local affiliates gave you. NBC ended up apologizing, saying they had tried to change course to show the end of the game, but people who needed to get word to do that couldn't, in part because phone lines were busy. Frank, what are busy phone lines? What's that sound like?
They ended up meeting again in the championship game. Jets won. Jets went on to win Super Bowl III. But growing up in the New York area, there was a period where both the Jets and the Giants were terrible. All I wanted to watch was Chuck Foreman and the Minnesota Vikings. But every weekend, I got the Jets and the Giants. That was a tough one for a long time.
I got way too much of Chuck Foreman and the Vikings, let me tell you. Yep. Happy trails to last night's game for Caitlin Clark in Iowa. The second-ranked Hawkeyes lost at home to unranked Kansas State. Clark scored 24 but struggled from the field, going just 9 for 32 overall, just 2 for 16 from 3. In her Iowa career, Clark had never shot so much, missed so many, nor had her team failed to score 60. Iowa joins LSU and UConn as top women's teams that have already lost games in the early going. Unbeaten South Carolina is currently and deservedly ranked #1. The Gamecocks thumped Clemson last night, Frank, by 69.
By the way, that Caitlin Clark 3 to tie the game was an absolute terrible shot. By the way, Connecticut, which beat Maryland, Paige Beckers played well. They lost AZ Fudd to a knee injury at practice the day before. She's a big-time player, so who knows how much that'll work out. It seems like, Mike, I know you agree with me, we know so many of the women's players in college basketball, not as many of the men's players. It's more fun. Right?
It's more entertaining. It's more fun. The stars are bigger. Men's college basketball, I'm sorry. You want to have your one and done? Fine. You fine. But don't tell me you're any good. Because nobody wants to watch that stuff.
We'll see you in March. That's when we'll talk.
We'll see you in March. It's a 6-week sport, men's college basketball. It's all they deserve. We're running out of show. Let's go to the big finish. Shohei and Ronald Acuna Jr. were unanimously voted baseball's MVPs. You okay with that?
I am. What do you make of Shohei Ohtani maybe taking a much smaller deal? Remember, he had elbow surgery. I think it sounds like he might return to the Angels. The Braves traded 5 players, including Mike Soroka, to the White Sox for reliever Aaron Bummer. Makes sense.
No. I mean, I know Bummer can strike people out, but I mean, his ERA is like huge. No. And by the way, the Cubs apparently are the second team for the odds makers to land Shohei, which is insane to me. The U.S. men beat Trinidad and Tobago 3-0. Were you impressed? I know you watched.
That's Mike Soroka. Sorry about that. No, I was not impressed with the U.S. last night. In fact, they scored all their goals after the 80th minute, up a man. Not an impressive performance. Bradley Beal will be reevaluated in 3 weeks. Your thoughts?
The Suns are a whisper right now. Evaluated in 3 weeks. We don't know when he's going to be back out there, and Beal's had these injury issues in D.C. Last one, Steelers-Browns Sunday. Who you got?
Do you know that Mike Tomlin, against rookie QBs,
Bill's healthy and smooth.
24-5. Pittsburgh, big on Sunday. We're out of time. Thanks for watching. I'm Frank Isola.
I'm Mike Wilbon. Have a great weekend, Knuckleheads. You can get the PTI podcast on the ESPN app or Apple Podcasts. And now, your sports. PTI.